Marcus had worked very hard all week. He was a kind and quiet man who lived in a small, peaceful neighborhood. They had recently bought a beautiful house with a nice garden and a swimming pool in the backyard. The pool was his favorite place too. Relax after a long day. It was a warm summer afternoon, and the sun was shining brightly in the sky. The air was hot and heavy. So Marcus decided to take a swim. He changed into his swim trunks and walked to the pool behind his house. The water looked clean and clear, inviting him to jump in. Marcus took a deep breath, smiled to himself, and stepped into the pool. The cool water felt wonderful on his skin, washing away the tiredness from his body. He floated on his back, looking up at the blue sky, feeling free and peaceful. Meanwhile, not far from Marcus's house, his neighbor Karen sat on her front porch. Karen was a middle-aged woman who lived alone. She was known in the neighborhood for being very strict and quick. To complain, she liked things to be quiet and orderly. When she saw Marcus swimming in the pool across the street, something inside her changed. She felt uneasy. Karen did not know that the pool belonged to Marcus. From her view, it looked like a stranger was using a pool in the neighborhood. Thought, who is this man? Does he belong here? Is he supposed to be swimming in that pool? Instead of asking or getting to know Marcus, Karen's mind filled with suspicion and worry. She was afraid. She remembered stories she had heard about crime and trouble in neighborhoods. Even though Marcus was just enjoying a swim, Karen's fear made her see him as a possible problem. She watched him for a few minutes, her eyes narrowed, her jaw tight. Her heart beat faster as she imagined all kinds of reasons why Marcus should not be there. Karen thought about her own safety and the safety of other neighbors. She believed she had to do something to protect her community. She called a friend to share her concerns. "There's a man swimming in the pool," she said quietly, "and I don't think he belongs here." Her friend told her to be careful. But Karen felt certain she was right to worry. Back at the pool, Marcus was calm. He noticed Karen looking from a distance, but he didn't understand why she seemed upset. He smiled politely and waved, but Karen quickly looked away. Marcus was used to being friendly with neighbors. He often greeted people with a nod or a hello when he saw them outside, but this time, Karen didn't respond the same way. Marcus wondered if something was wrong. He finished his swim and got out of the pool, drying himself with a towel. He wanted to enjoy the rest of his afternoon quietly. He went back inside his house, thinking about making some lemonade to cool down. Meanwhile, Karen's feelings grew stronger. She decided that watching Marcus was not enough. She wanted action. Without knowing anything about Marcus or his right to be there, she made a choice that would change the day for both of them. Karen picked up her phone and dialed 911. Her voice was firm, but whispered as she spoke to the operator. "There's a man swimming in a pool," she said. "I don't know who he is, but I think he shouldn't be there. Please send the police." She described the house and the man as best as she could, making sure to say she was concerned for safety. After the call, Karen felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She believed she was doing the right thing. She sat back down on her porch, watching the street carefully, waiting for the police to arrive. She told herself this was about protecting her home and neighborhood. Not long after, 2 police cars arrived at the quiet street. The officers got out and walked toward Marcus's house. The neighbors nearby stopped their activities and looked on. Some were curious, others worried. Marcus heard the voices and footsteps. He opened his front door and saw the police officers approaching. He was surprised, did not understand why the police were coming to his home. He stepped outside and smiled politely. "Hello, officers. How can I help you?" The officers looked serious but calm. They said they were there because of a call about someone swimming in the pool. Marcus explained. "That's my pool. I live here," he showed them his house and the pool behind it. He was calm and honest, but the officers needed to check. They asked Marcus for his ID and proof that the house and pool belonged to him. Marcus went inside and brought his driver's license and some papers showing he owned the property. He handed them to the officers. As the officers checked the documents, Karen watched from her porch. She saw Marcus talking with the police and felt both nervous and proud. Proud because she thought she had called the police to stop a stranger, and nervous because she wondered what the officers would say. The situation was tense. Some neighbors whispered quietly, unsure about what was happening. Marcus stayed calm, but felt the weight of the moment. He wanted to be respectful, but also wanted to protect his home and his right to enjoy it. The officers returned the documents and nodded. They told Marcus everything looked correct. "You are the owner," one officer said. "We just wanted." To be sure, Marcus felt relieved. He expected the officers to leave now, but Karen was not done. She walked over to the officers and spoke loudly enough for Marcus and others to hear. "I don't feel safe with him here," she said. "This is a nice neighborhood, and I don't want strangers swimming in pools. He should leave." The officers listened carefully. They explained to Karen that Marcus was the owner and had the right to be there, but Karen insisted. She talked about how she felt uncomfortable and worried about safety. She used strong words and a firm tone. Marcus looked at the officers, hoping they would see the truth clearly. He felt surprised that Karen's feelings were influencing the situation more than the facts. He stayed calm, waiting for what the police would decide. The officers had to decide how to handle the situation. They knew Marcus was the owner, but they also wanted to respect Karen's concerns. The day was still warm, and the tension between the neighbors grew. Marcus thought about how this day started as a simple swim, but it turned into something much more difficult. He wondered how fear and misunderstanding could change how people see each other. He wanted peace, but knew he might have to explain and stand up for himself many times more. The story shows how a quiet neighborhood can become tense when people do not know each other well. It also shows how fear and assumptions can create problems, even when someone is simply enjoying their own home. As the sun began to set, Marcus stood by his pool, waiting for the police to finish their talk with Karen. He hoped this misunderstanding could be solved peacefully. But deep inside, he knew this day would stay in his mind for a long time. The police officers looked at each other quietly before they spoke again. One of them, Officer Davis, said, "Sir, can you please step out of the pool so we can talk and check some things?" Marcus nodded calmly. He stepped out of the pool, feeling the warm air on his wet skin. He wrapped a towel around his waist and walked toward the officers, still trying to stay calm and polite. The officers explained to Marcus that they had to make sure everything was okay because they had received a call from a concerned neighbor. Marcus understood, even though he felt a little upset that someone had called the police on him while he was simply relaxing in his own home. He thought to himself, "How could anyone think I don't belong here when this is my house?" Meanwhile, Karen was watching everything carefully. She stood nearby, arms crossed, feeling that she was doing the right thing to keep the neighborhood safe. Karen had told the officers about her fears and how she didn't feel comfortable seeing Marcus swimming in the pool. She did not realize how hurtful and unfair her words might sound. Officer Davis asked Marcus to show some proof that the house and pool belonged to him. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his driver's license and a folder with important papers. He handed them over to the officers. The officers looked at the papers carefully. There was a clear deed showing Marcus owned the house and property, including the pool. One of the officers, Officer Lee, nodded and said, "Okay, everything seems to be in order. You own the house and the pool." Marcus felt a small relief. Hoped the officers would tell Karen that everything was fine now. But Karen wasn't ready to stop. She stepped forward and said firmly, "Even if he owns the house, I still don't feel safe with him here. It's not just about the property. It's about the neighborhood and how it looks. I think it's better if he leaves." Marcus felt a sharp sting in his heart. He looked at Karen and then at the officers. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he said softly. "This is my home, and I have the right to be here. I was just trying to cool off." Officer Davis looked between Marcus and Karen, trying to keep the peace. He said, "Ma'am, we understand your concerns. But since Mr. Marcus owns the property, he has every right to be here." He tried to explain the law in a calm voice. Karen shook her head. "You don't understand. It's not just about the law. It's about feeling safe in my home and neighborhood. I think it's better for everyone if he leaves now." The officers found themselves in a difficult situation. They had to balance the facts with the feelings of both people. They wanted to respect Marcus's rights, but also wanted to listen to Karen's fears. While the officers were talking, a few neighbors began to come out of their houses quietly. They stood at a distance, watching what was happening. Some whispered to each other. They were surprised to see the police at Marcus's house. Marcus felt more pressure as more eyes turned to him. He remained calm but worried about what might happen next. He thought about how often people judged others by how they looked, instead of getting to know them. Karen continued to speak to the officers with confidence. I want this man to leave now. I don't want to see him swimming here anymore. Her voice was firm and steady. Officer Lee turned to Marcus and asked gently, Is there a reason you have not told your neighbors that you own this house and pool? Maybe that would help avoid misunderstandings? Marcus nodded. I have tried to be friendly, greet some neighbors when I see them, but I don't want to cause problems or make people uncomfortable. I thought living quietly was best. Kieran interrupted. Quiet or not, people have a right to know who lives here and what is happening. I didn't know anything until I saw him swimming. That's why I called. The officers tried to calm the situation. Officer Davis said, Maybe it would help if you and Mr. Marcus talked and got to know each other better. That might make everyone feel more comfortable. Karen looked at Marcus but didn't say anything. Marcus smiled slightly and said, I would like that. I want to be part of the neighborhood and live in peace. Karen hesitated but nodded slowly. She still looked uneasy but agreed to try. The officers explained that since Marcus was the owner, they could not force him to leave. However, they wanted to make sure everyone was safe and calm. After a few more moments, the officers thanked both Marcus and Karen for cooperating. They reminded Karen that if she had real safety concerns in the future, she should contact the police, but she should also try to understand her neighbors first. Karen muttered something but did not look happy. She walked back toward her porch, still feeling that her worries were important. Marcus went back to his house, feeling tired and sad about the whole experience. The neighbors slowly returned to their homes. Some were talking quietly about what they had seen. They wondered how a simple swim had turned into a police visit. Some felt sympathy for Marcus, while others felt unsure. Marcus sat down inside his house and thought about the day's events. He felt a mixture of emotions. He was proud to own his home and enjoy it, but sad that fear and misunderstanding had caused so much trouble. He thought about how important it was for people to get to know each other, to talk and learn instead of jumping to conclusions. He hoped that one day, neighbors would accept each other for who they are and live without fear. Later that evening, Marcus decided to write a message to the neighborhood group on social media. He explained what had happened and asked people to be kind and respectful. He wanted to open a conversation about trust and community. The story shows how fear and suspicion can cause problems, even in peaceful places. It reminds us that talking and understanding are better than judging and calling for help too soon. It also shows how important it is to respect people's rights and not let fear take control. Marcus knew this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges, but he was ready to face them with kindness and patience. He wanted to live in a neighborhood where everyone felt safe, welcome, and respected. After the police officers left, the quiet neighborhood began to feel different. The day's events had left a mark. Marcus stood by his pool, thinking about what had just happened. He was still trying to understand how something as simple as swimming in his own pool could turn into such a big problem. Even though the officers had confirmed he owned the house and pool, Karen's words kept ringing in his ears. She had said she did not feel safe with him there. That hurt Marcus deeply because he had done nothing wrong. He'd only wanted to relax and enjoy his home. Marcus decided that he needed to talk more with his neighbors, to explain who he was and what his life was like. He thought if people got to know him better, maybe their fears and suspicions would disappear. So he made a plan to introduce himself and share his story. That evening, Marcus wrote a message on the neighborhood's online group. He explained the situation from his side and asked his neighbors to be open and kind. He wrote about how much he loved living there and how he wanted to build a friendly community. Marcus hoped his words would reach people's hearts. The next morning, Marcus went outside early, walked down the street, and greeted people he met with a warm smile. He stopped at a few houses to say hello and introduce himself. Many neighbors were surprised but smiled back. Some shook his hand and welcomed him, but not everyone was ready to accept Marcus so easily. Karen stayed inside her house, watching quietly from the window. She was still upset and confused. She thought about the call she made to the police and whether it had been the right choice. Later that day, Marcus received a visit from Officer Davis. The officer wanted to check in with Marcus and see how things were going. Marcus appreciated the visit. They talked about how important it was for neighbors to understand each other and work together. Officer Davis said, "Mr. Marcus, sometimes people get scared of what they don't know. It's our job to keep everyone safe, but also to help people. Talk and solve problems peacefully." Marcus nodded. "Agree, officer. Want to live in a neighborhood where everyone feels welcome and safe. I will do my best to build those relationships." Meanwhile, Karen's feelings began to change. She realized that maybe her fears had made her see Marcus in a wrong way. She thought about how she could make peace. She decided to write a letter to Marcus, apologizing if her actions had caused hurt. Marcus received the letter a few days later. In it, Karen wrote that she had been scared and didn't understand the situation fully. She said she wanted to move forward with respect and kindness. Marcus felt touched by her words. He believed this was a good step for both of them. The neighborhood slowly began to change. Marcus continued to greet neighbors and attend local meetings. He shared stories about his life, his work, and his dreams. People began to see him as a real person, not just a stranger. Karen also made efforts. She started to join neighborhood gatherings and learned more about her neighbors. She listened to their stories and shared her own. The walls of fear and suspicion began to break down. One afternoon, the neighborhood organized a small barbecue at the park. Marcus and Karen both attended. They stood together, sharing food and laughter with others. The day was filled with warmth and friendship. During the barbecue, Marcus talked about the importance of understanding and kindness. He said we all come from different places, and sometimes we fear what is new or different. But when we open our hearts, we find friendship and peace. Karen smiled and nodded. She felt grateful to have learned a lesson about trust and community. She realized that sometimes fear can make people forget the good in others. Back at his home, Marcus looked at his pool. It was no longer just a place to swim. It had become a symbol of hope, connection, and change. Marcus knew the journey was not over, but he was ready to keep moving forward. The story shows how fear and misunderstanding can cause problems, but also how communication and kindness can heal wounds. It reminds us that everyone deserves respect and a chance to be known for who they truly are. Marcus and Karen's story became an example in their neighborhood. It inspired others to look beyond fear and build a stronger, more caring community. The pool that once caused tension now reflected the smiles and friendship of the people around it. Despite the progress Marcus and Karen were trying to make, not everything was easy or smooth. One afternoon, as Marcus was working in his garden near the pool, Karen came over unexpectedly. She looked serious and a little tense. Her politely wondering what was on her mind, Karen took a deep breath and spoke carefully. "Marcus, I have been thinking a lot about everything that happened, but honestly, I still feel uncomfortable sometimes. I don't want to cause trouble, but I have to be honest with you." Marcus listened quietly. He knew it wasn't easy for Karen to admit her feelings. He said gently, "Thank you for telling me how you feel. I want us to be honest with each other. Maybe talking about what makes you uncomfortable can help us understand each other better." Karen nodded slowly. "It's not about you personally. I guess it's about my fears. Sometimes I worry about the safety of my home and my family. I know I was wrong to call the police like that, but I was scared." Marcus smiled softly. "Understand. Fear. It is normal to feel scared sometimes. But fear can also cause mistakes. I hope we can find a way to trust each other and build a better neighborhood together." Just then, one of the officers, Officer Lee, walked by and stopped. He had heard part of their conversation. He joined in, saying, "I've seen many situations like this, and misunderstanding can cause problems. But when people talk honestly, they can find solutions." Karen looked at Officer Lee and said, "I guess I need to learn more about my neighbors. Maybe I need to meet more people and listen to their stories." Marcus smiled warmly. I would be happy to introduce you to some of the neighbors. We can share stories and get to know each other better. The three of them talked for a while longer, making plans for the upcoming neighborhood meeting. They wanted to create a safe space for everyone to share their thoughts and concerns. As days passed, Marcus worked hard to make the neighborhood friendlier. He invited neighbors for coffee and helped organize community events. Slowly, people began to smile more when they saw him. Karen tried to. She attended meetings and talked with others. But sometimes old fears came back. One evening, she saw Marcus's lights on late, and she felt uneasy. She wondered if he was really a good neighbor, or if there was still something she did not know. Thoughts were interrupted when another neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, came by her house. Mrs. Jenkins was kind and wise. She noticed Karen's worried face and asked gently, "Karen, what's on your mind?" Karen sighed. "I'm trying to be better, but sometimes I still feel scared. I don't want to be unfair, but old feelings are hard to forget." Mrs. Jenkins smiled. Kindly, "It is good to admit your feelings. Change takes time. The important thing is to keep trying and to give people a chance." Karen nodded slowly, feeling comforted by Mrs. Jenkins's words. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to face challenges. One day, he found a note on his door. It was anonymous and said, "You don't belong here." The words hurt him deeply. What? Instead, of feeling angry, Marcus decided to use this pain to teach others. He wrote a letter to the neighborhood group, sharing his feelings honestly. He said that hate and fear only create more problems, but kindness and understanding can heal. Many neighbors read his letter and felt moved. At the next community meeting, Marcus spoke about his experiences. He said, "We all want to feel safe and happy in our homes, but safety comes from trust and respect, not fear and suspicion." Karen listened carefully. She felt a strong urge to support Marcus. After the meeting, she approached him and said, "Marcus, I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. I want to learn and do better." Marcus smiled and replied, "Thank you, Karen. I believe we can build a better neighborhood together." The story shows how real change is not easy. It takes courage to face fears and work through pain. But with honest talks, kindness, and patience, people can grow and heal. Marcus and Karen's journey became a lesson for their whole community. It reminded everyone that true safety and happiness come from understanding, respect, and friendship. The pool that once was a source of conflict now stood as a symbol of hope. Around it grew new friendships and stronger bonds. Marcus, Karen, and their neighbors learned that even when times are hard, people can come together to make things right. After months of small steps and hard talks, the neighborhood began to feel like a different place. The tension that once hung in the air slowly lifted, replaced by something warmer and softer. Marcus and Karen had worked through many difficult moments, learning from each other and from their neighbors. The change wasn't easy, but it was real. One bright Saturday morning, the community center announced a special event. It was a day for neighbors to come together, share food, stories, and laughter, a celebration of friendship and new beginnings. Marcus and Karen decided to attend together, ready to show the neighborhood that they could be a team, not enemies. As people arrived, be parked filled with children playing, families greeting one another, and friends catching up. Marcus smiled as he saw familiar faces. Some were neighbors who had once looked at him with suspicion but now waved and said hello. Karen stood nearby, feeling a bit nervous, but also hopeful. During the event, Marcus took a moment to speak to the crowd. His voice was calm and steady. As he shared his journey from the moment police arrived at his home to where he stood now, he spoke about fear, misunderstanding, and the power of kindness. "We all have fears," he said, "but when we open our hearts, we find courage. We can build a community where everyone feels safe and welcome." Karen listened with attention. When it was her turn, she stood up and spoke softly. She admitted her fears and mistakes, expressing regret for how she had acted at first. She thanked Marcus and the neighbors for their patience and understanding. Her words touched many people, showing that change comes from honesty and humility. The neighborhood cheered and applauded. The day became a symbol of hope and healing.
Children ran
Freely, neighbors shared food and stories flowed easily. The pool at Marcus's home, once a place of conflict, now symbolized connection, a reminder that fear can be replaced by friendship. Marcus and Karen spent time talking, laughing, and planning new ways to bring the neighborhood closer. New challenges would still come, but they felt stronger because they faced them together. They promised to keep working, listening, and learning. Later that evening, Marcus sat by his pool watching the sunset paint the sky with colors of orange and pink. He thought about how much had changed not just in the neighborhood but inside himself. He had learned that patience and kindness could break down walls, even when they seemed strongest. Karen looked out her window across the street, feeling grateful for the chance to grow and heal. She knew the road ahead would not always be easy, but she was ready to walk it with an open heart. Their story spread beyond the neighborhood, shared in local news and social media. Many people saw it as a lesson in hope, courage, and the power of human connection. It reminded everyone that no matter where we come from, we all want the same things: respect, safety, and friendship. The neighborhood was no longer divided by fear. Instead, it was united by understanding. Marcus's pool became a quiet place of peace, laughter, and welcomer place where everyone knew they belonged. And so, the story ends not with a conflict, but with a new beginning. It shows us that even when we face fear and misunderstanding, there is always a path to kindness and community. All it takes is courage, open hearts, and the willingness to listen.